Okay, so I have just pulled out my dough. We sheeted this out about an hour ago and it's been resting in the fridge. Now I'm going to show you how to roll this out, get it to its final shape, and then cut our pastries. You have a shaping guide at the end of your recipe packet, and it's got versions for using a whole piece or a half piece. We're gonna do half and half, so we're gonna pay attention to these dimensions over here. The half piece of 14 by 12 for the plain croissants and 12 by 14 for the pain au chocolat. I'm gonna start by just cutting this piece in half. So I'm going to gently dust the bench and pick up my croissant dough and lay it out. I'm going to flatten it really gently, and then I'm going to measure and cut it so we can do half plain and half pain au chocolat. I'm going to cut this and then stash this other piece that I'm not working with back in the fridge so that it doesn't warm up too much. Okay, so we've got our half piece. You probably already noticed, but I've pulled out this chef's knife. You want a nice sharp knife, preferably something large so you can make long continuous cuts when you go to cut your pastries. But we want to use something sharp so that all of those layers don't get mashed together. So you don't want to use like a bench scraper or anything like that. You want to use something that's going to cleanly cut those layers. And we're going to just slightly adjust this. We want this to be 12 by 14. It was about 12 by 13. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by marking the equator on this dough, and I'm going to mark that halfway midline point. And then what I'm going to do is mark every 4 inches. So I'll start on the edge, and then making sure I leave a little mark on either side of that line. I'm going to mark every 4 inches, and then I'm going to find the midway point and mark every 4 inches from there. And this will become clear what we're doing in just a second. We're going to do that same thing. I'm going to use the knife. Mark that midway point and then start measuring from the end. So now what we've got are these triangles that we can cut out. So I'll just show you before we cut out. If we match these up, we'll have these triangles alternating to make our croissants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, you can mark it out for yourself if you feel more comfortable, or you can just connect the dots when you're actually cutting. So I'm just going to go from this mark to here, and then there, and back and forth across. Croissant dough can't be put back together because it's a laminated dough, so we need to work with it as evenly and efficiently as possible. So it's kind of like, you want to treat it sort of like fabric. If you're cutting out fabric for a sewing pattern, you want to lay out your pieces as efficiently as possible so that you get the maximum number of croissants. Okay. Now I like to stack these all up while I'm shaping because it'll just help retain the cool temperatures of the dough and keep it easy to work with. So when we shape these, there's a couple different ways, and I'm going to show you both. So we can gently stretch this dough just in the middle, and then what we're going to do is we're going to tuck this end portion in and kind of pinch it down so it stays firmly where it is. And then you're going to just tightly roll it straight up. And I'll show that again. We're going to just gently stretch in the middle and then pinch and roll straight up. Okay. If you're looking for more of a crescent shape, you can try a slightly different method. And what we're going to do there is we're going to cut about a 1/2 inch in the middle of that croissant, and I'm still going to go ahead and gently stretch in the middle. But when I do my first pinching, I'm going to dramatically sort of pull these little wings out to the side. So pull those out, and then as I roll, I'm gonna be, rather than rolling straight forward, I'm gonna roll out like so. So I'm pushing out as I go. And it gives me this kind of wonky shape, which has these larger kind of wings that I can shape into more of a crescent shaped croissant. I'll show that one more time. I'm gonna gently stretch. I'm gonna fold that over and to the edge, like so. So when we're shaping these, we want to make sure that we've secured the bottom so that it's not going to come unrolled when we proof it. So I always think a good indication of that is if you can see it from the back just a little bit. So ideally we have 3 levels, 1, 2, 3, and then we can see that tail from the back just slightly. You have 3 choices now. You can either go straight into proofing and baking these, so we can proof them and bake them within the next hour. You can put these in the fridge and hold them overnight so that you can proof and bake them in the morning, which is what we do at the bakery. We shape them the day before and then they stay in the walk-in fridge overnight. Or you can freeze them at this stage. If you freeze them individually shaped, the nice thing about that is that you can pull out a few at a time. You would pull them out of the freezer into the fridge, let them thaw overnight, and then proof and bake in the morning. If you have more questions about proofing, we will definitely answer those in the proofing session, so don't despair. Now, pain au chocolat get these little chocolate batons in them, so we shape them differently. We cut our pastry and shape them differently so that we can accommodate those batons. If you got a croissant class kit from us, then you got some chocolate batons, which are dark chocolate that has a little bit of cocoa butter taken out and replaced with something that's stable. These are really nice to have, but since they only come in big boxes like this, you may want to find something else at home. And what I would recommend there is just a bar of dark chocolate that you like. Preferably somewhere between 50 and 70%. I wouldn't go any over 70. It'll overwhelm the flavor of the pastry. And then you can just break that bar or cut that bar into pieces like this baton. Once again, I'm going to stack these to keep them cool. If at any point while you're working with the dough it starts to feel really, really flimsy and like the butter is melting or tearing, you can go ahead and pop it back in the fridge. So just wrap it and pop it back in the fridge before you want to work with it. Again, your brush can be handy if you have a little extra flour on these. When you're rolling up this dough, once again, we want it to adhere to itself. So go ahead and use that brush if you have any extra flour that you feel like is going to keep this from holding onto itself. Okay, when I shape pain au chocolat, I take my dough and I just pull it out just a little bit and lengthen it a little bit. And then we're gonna lay 1 chocolate baton here, and then, well, they're here. Each pain au chocolat gets 2 batons. So I like to go ahead and tuck that one in, tuck it in like so. And then we're gonna add our second baton. And we're gonna roll it straight up. When we get to the bottom, I'm gonna push directly down, so I've secured that edge, and this is what our pain au chocolat should look like from the outside. Again, rolling up, pushing straight down. Now there's a couple particulars that I wanted to mention. First is we've got, based on where we cut the dough, we've got a cut side, and then we have a not cut side. I always start with the cut side in the middle. The other thing I wanted to point out is that there's a real tendency when you start learning to shape pain au chocolat to get these like sort of wings that stick out, and you get these little funky pieces of dough that look, you know, not super professional. So just make sure that when you are shaping your pain au chocolat, you're tucking those edges within the perimeter of the outside of the dough. Second baton, roll up.